But I want to go ahead and welcome everyone to the fifth Space Education Summit. We're really thrilled to have you all here. This is a free online event focused on preparing students for the growing space economy and for humanity's future in space. We're talking about a thriving future at that. So really fantastic to bring together educators, psychologists, young professionals, and professionals from across the space industry and beyond, and enthusiasts as well, including informal educators of all kinds. So we're talking lifelong learning here, not just K-12 or academia. And it's fantastic to have you all here from all over the world joining us for this event. We love, I know we saw Tanzania and San Francisco and Ireland here so far. If you guys can share in the chat too where you're connecting from. We are certainly all crew here on Spaceship Earth, and I like to think if you're in Ireland and I'm in California, it's like being in the bridge in the engine room on a giant spaceship, right? Just so big, we have time zones. All right, welcome everyone. I do want to say a few words about the event before we kick off. First of all, I want to acknowledge that we're largely inspired or greatly inspired by the overview effect and the work of Frank White, who will be joining us for the fireside chat this afternoon, Pacific time. Frank coined the term in 1987 after interviewing dozens and now I think hundreds of people who have been to space. And they tend to have a perspective where they look back on the Earth and they don't see borders and they don't see tribes and they see that we're all in this together in a small, relatively fragile lifeboat in the dark depths of space. And when you've seen our planet from that overview, it tends to change your perspective when you come back down here. People tend to come back a little bit more focused on the environment and diplomacy and working together. So that inspires a lot of this event. I think we'll touch on those ideas and those themes throughout the day, but did want to acknowledge Frank and his work right up front. I also want to acknowledge my co-hosts and co-organizers. Everyone here is volunteering to put this together, and I'm super stoked to work with these folks. But my co-host, Gitika Gorthy, is the founder and CEO of Ignited Thinkers, where she has just fantastic interview series on YouTube as well. She just finished her sophomore year at Columbia University in the College of Engineering and Applied Sciences, and she's aspiring to be an aerospace physician and medical researcher. So the rest of us are excited to work with Gitika on this project. She brings a great energy to it. My other co-host, Ron Rosano, has been pursuing his passion of inspiring students about space travel for over 25 years as an informal astronomy and spaceflight educator with several different programs. He's flew to space with Virgin Galactic in October and was shortly on an astronaut panel just like this one. And now he's helping me moderate. Ron is also hosting our giant Zoom meeting. So thanks to Ron for that. Dr. Anahita Nizami is an author, researcher, and entrepreneur, as well as a lecturer at Kepler Space Institute and a chartered psychologist providing consultation, training, and therapy. She's also the founder of Earthscape VR, which she'll be presenting on later today. And myself, I'm the founder of Ares Learning, which is the Academy for the Relentless Exploration of Space. I work with the Aldrin Family Foundation with SLU, the Cosmic Classroom, and provide a number of space education professional development opportunities for teachers. I want to also acknowledge our partners, primarily our promotional partners in this, but most of these folks also have really fantastic space education programs. The Aldrin Family Foundation and their signature Giant Moon Map and Giant Mars Map, SLU, which gives students access to remote telescopes. Anahita's Earthscape VR, which uses virtual reality to provide people with that overview effect experience, informed by her role as a psychologist. Gitika's Ignited Thinkers, of course, and Club for the Future for presenting at past events and helping us get the word out. Space Foundation is presenting today, and they have fantastic education programs in their liaison program. Weekend University makes psychology lectures available to people globally. And of course, the Human Space Program, which was founded by Frank and inspired by his work on the overview effect. And I see a lot of those folks here today. So then to you, If you are participating in this day, it is meant to be particularly interactive. I can see everybody connecting in the chat already, which is fantastic. So please do participate in the chat, introduce yourself, answer the questions when asked, and also don't be shy about asking questions. You can use the raise hand feature at any time, and you can also unmute or share your screen at the appropriate time. And feel free to use the help feature or just text Ron or I or any of the other hosts, and we will try to help you out if you need it. So in that spirit, if there are any questions or anything else that's needed before we dive into the panel, now's a good time. Awesome. It looks like everybody's connected and participating, which is great. And we just got a little over 70 people involved. So that's a fantastic time to introduce our panel as well. And I can see most of them on my screen, which is fantastic, but I know they're all here. Dr. George Nield is joining us after decades of aerospace experience at the Air Force, at NASA, at the FAA, and in private industry. At NASA, he worked on the Space Shuttle program and the International Space Station program. At the FAA, he was responsible for licensing and regulating all commercial launch activities. And in March, he flew as a commercial astronaut himself. March 2022. Hard to believe it's been 2 years. Flew as a commercial astronaut himself on Blue Origin flight NS-20. And Keisha Schahaff also joins us. She had the privilege of winning 2 tickets on Virgin Galactic. And in addition to being the first astronaut from Antigua and Barbuda in the Caribbean, she also shared this extraordinary experience with her daughter, Anastasia, making the first mother-daughter duo to go to space. She also serves as a wellness coach and a self-development mentor, empowering women to pursue their dreams and overcome their fears. She believes that healing oneself is the key to healing our planet. Veteran astronaut and engineer Charlie Walker flew on 3 space shuttle missions, but as the chief test engineer at McDonnell Douglas during NASA's commercialization program in the 80s, he was also the first commercial astronaut. So we have an all-commercial astronaut panel today, which is kind of extraordinary. He also spent many years on the ground helping with payload preparation, on-pad processing at Kennedy Space Center, and at Mission Control in Houston. I noted that he's also a founding board member of the Astronauts Memorial Foundation, and I'm really excited because their building at Kennedy Space Center is called the Space Education Center, and it was really an impactful moment for me to walk into a building with that sort of title. So I want to welcome our panel. Ron, who also flew to Virgin Galactic himself, and I will be moderating today. We've got a number of questions for the panel, and then we will open it up to participants as well. So perhaps I can kick this off with a question similar to what we asked all of you when you connected this morning. But I like asking, like, what is the trajectory that brought you to space and that brought you here? And as an aside, if there's anybody special that gave you a gravity assist along the way, we'd love to hear about that. But what's the trajectory that brought you to space? And I see Charlie unmuted. Maybe we can start with Charlie.
Thank you, Mark. I'm delighted to be here today. I'm delighted to be able to participate with all the interested folks, and certainly with my honorable colleagues as well today. Great question to start with, Mark. I've got to relate, my answer has to relate to my age in significant fashion, because I grew up, I'm literally a child of the space age. Until I was 9 years old, space flight, human space flight was only fiction, science fiction. I was in the 4th grade when the first satellites were launched. And in junior high school, middle high school, when the first individuals left the soil of this planet to go higher than ever before and faster than ever before into space. It was the energy of our societies at that time that helped inspire me. I certainly had teachers and family. My parents were wholly supportive of thinking beyond just the earthly bounds and encouraged me to do so. So the educational environment, the political environment at the time that is fostering a race to space was all foundational to me. But I've also got to say, of course, that encouraged to be curious by my parents, my even my peers, because students at the time and kids that I ran with were all interested in that kind of a future for themselves. I'm just very fortunate to have stayed laser focused on that and pursued that to the ends as they are at the moment that I've been able to reach. So what got me started was humanities initial steps into space and the motivation of that, as well as just being curious and encouraged to be curious and always looking to learn, be a continuous learner.
Well, I love that ending note, but I also love the perspective of the fact that we've got these veteran astronauts and sort of new astronauts flying on new vehicles. But in your lifetime, it was science fiction, and here we are today talking about preparing for a future for all humanity. Definitely a great perspective to start with. Well, Keisha or George, when do you want to jump in there next?
Hi.
Keisha,
I just
please.
had to unmute myself. Didn't mean to jump in there on you, George. Sorry. Greetings to everyone, to all us Earthlings. It's such an amazing privilege to be here, just sitting amongst all these giants. And just to jump right in, I was very much intrigued about this whole life and existence from when I was a toddler. Just always had this curious mindset, like, what is all of this for? My grandfather really jump-started me by opening up my imagination about exploring space and showing me evidence on the National Geographic Explorer magazine with the first man to the moon, Neil Armstrong. And these memories really stayed with me and really dug deeper into my curiosity as I started getting older and all of the Hollywood films that were out there and just research. And I was like, how am I going to get there? What is the purpose of all of this? Why are we here? Why do we have like everything? I was just questioning everything. Always fascinated with the stars, looking up. How can I get up there? How can we know more about what's out there? Who else is out there? Who's looking at us? So I always had this type of curiosity about it. And then, understanding that, hey, you can become an astronaut, learning about NASA, but then how can I work for NASA? I don't have the brain for that. I didn't do as great in sciences as I wanted to, even if I loved it so much. So I just kind of gave up hope on that and instead started praying for aliens to probably abduct me or something, like however I can get up there, just please just take me there. I never had a fear towards that, but it's so weird. I had a fear towards so many other things in life. So, having that opportunity and seeing that I could have had this chance of winning 2 seats to space and actually winning this, it was just such a miracle. Um, and I had no fear towards that, but I had fear towards public speaking and just interacting with people because I always felt like who else out there thought like me. But then I found a team of people who actually did think like this, who were very curious about what else is out there and actually living this, other astronauts. So I felt like, hey, I found my tribe, I found my people, I found my Earthlings who are also explorers and curious and adventurous to see what else is there and to share this with others as well. So it's just a big privilege, just to be a part of all of this.
Awesome, thank you. It's great to have your perspective here too. And I feel like you're asking such good questions. That could be the rest of the panel is asking everybody what else is out there. Well, fantastic. Let's send it over to George then and hear a bit about his trajectory.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Mark, and great to see everyone. I really appreciate the invitation to participate today. So I was interested in airplanes and space from the time I was a small child. I actually had my first flight in an airplane when I was just a couple of weeks old. My father had recently gotten his pilot's license, and he decided to take my mother and me up for a ride in a small plane. And the story goes that I cried uncontrollably when the control stick actually accidentally hit me in the head, but I can't confirm that really happened. But in any case, that was my start to flying. And in terms of space, I was just fascinated when we started seeing activities in space. I used to cut out articles from the newspaper about the space chimps and the Mercury astronauts, and had myself a little scrapbook, which I think is still around somewhere. But I was just following everything as close as I could and just dreamed of the day of maybe someday getting a chance to go to space. I did enjoy math and science in school, and going to college, I decided to attend the Air Force Academy because I thought that would be a great place to learn more about aviation and space, and it would also be a challenge, which I enjoyed, and offered me a chance to serve our country, which was important to me. And then throughout my career in the Air Force and working for NASA on the shuttle program, the FAA, and the Office of Commercial Space, had a lot of great different opportunities to support our country's space programs. It wasn't until after I had retired from the government at age 71 that I actually had a chance to personally go to space, but it was worth the wait. Just a fantastic experience.
I had the opportunity to hear you speak a week ago too, and talk about how space is now for people who might not have been able to go with NASA. I thought that was an important perspective. But I want to hand that off to Ron right now for our next question.
Great. Thanks, Mark, and thanks all for being here, and thanks for joining us. I'm going to grab a question out of the chat from Mohammed Al-Siri. What was the most awe-inspiring moment you experienced when looking down at the Earth from space?
That's a great one, Ron.
Yeah.
And jump in
any one of the three of you, yeah.
So for me, the entire experience was just amazing, but absolutely the high point was the view. Blue Origin has these huge big windows. 6 people flew on the flight, 6 windows, so everybody had a window seat. And after the main engine cut off, we had a chance to unstrap and float around and do some somersaults and so forth. But most of the flight, I was just glued to the window, because to be able to look out and see the curvature of the Earth and that thin blue band that's the atmosphere that you're above, and you look up from there, and instead of blue sky, it is the blackest black that you can imagine. It's not like, oh, it's dark outside. No, this is bright black. The sun was shining. And it was just the most beautiful sight I've ever seen in my life. Pictures and videos and movies do not do it justice. It just gives me goosebumps just to talk about it. It's just an incredible experience.
Charlie, do you have anything that's you have some things that stood out for you? So many.
When that question comes up, and of course it always does come up in group conversation, I start by, as I just did, chuckling a little bit, because the overall grandeur and scale and scope of the experience just leads me to say that that's an impossible question to answer as it was posted. I mean, to me, the question as posted, what was your most? That it's our human characteristic to have to distill to a singularity, it seems to me, and there is in my 3 space flight experience, and just to repeat, and I think it needs to be emphasized, and all with all due respect that's to everybody else here, I'm the one with orbital experience, over 20 days in space, in orbit, and it's a continual a continual emphasis of life, of human life, of our life in a universe that is, to human perspective, unlimited, infinite, and you certainly get a taste of that by leaving the perceived restraints of gravity. And I know that happens in suborbital flight. It is emphasized every microsecond, every minute, every hour, every day, every week that you're in orbital flight. And so the experience, what was my most intriguing experience? It's a human characteristic, I think, to need to, or feel that you need to focus on the first time that you experience something of extraordinary nature. So as I will need to and will distill just what I said to try to answer that question as posted, what was my most? I've got to say it was the first view of the Earth. And not to dwell too long, but on details. But as I flew a crew of 6 or 7 in my 3 flights, I flew in the middle deck of the space shuttle, and which means that I was below the flight deck, and and as an itinerant among the professional astronauts, was only allowed access to the flight deck where the windows were an hour and a half or so after we launched. And it was not anything like, well, they have the privilege first. It was not anything like that at all. The professional astronauts are just very busy with the duties of transforming a rocket ship into an orbiting space base for the period of time you're there, and intense activities for the first hour or so. But when I drifted up to look at the panoramic windows of the space shuttle, not as panoramic as George and Ron know from the days of their recent flights on suborbital spacecraft that we have today, but still wide open windows. The view back at the Earth and then the limb of the Earth is an unforgettable impression of the reality of the universe that we live in and our small place in it.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I felt the same, really. It's like realization of the planet and its natural environment that you just don't get from being on the ground. Keisha, what was the most, or what was an outstanding, experience? What stands out for you?
Well, it's really such an awe experience. And it was really the feeling that came with it. I know that just that sight of seeing the Earth for the first time from being so high, it just took my words away. I know I just spoke in tongues. I didn't feel any life in my mouth anymore. And wow, it was just being in the moment. I've never been so much in the moment as I was just looking at our planet. But I wasn't just fascinated with our beautiful planet. It was everything else I could see out there, really wanting to experience the darkness. Usually we're afraid of the dark, but seeing that dark, how dark it was just really peaceful. And just feeling that no gravity on the body, it felt like the thoughts just went away. Every ache in the body just went away, and all I could be is just present, and just seeing the sun for the first time so high and just being so shocked at how the sun looked just silver or white and just there with I mean, I'm not coming from a science background, but it was just a slither of light just beaming to the planet, and just like a straight arrow of light, and just how the planet lit up and just blue and magical, like this little animal just floating there. This ball of an animal just looks so peaceful and zen. And you could see this is where everything was happening. And I've always wanted to just leave this planet. And then now I could see this is where the life was happening. Just magic was there. And this is where I wanted to return so I could just enjoy it. And from since then, I could just see us, we are the planet. We are that just one thing that's just floating in this ball of darkness. It was just beautiful.
Yeah, it's a little ironic. You have to leave the planet to get that kind of an understanding of it.
I know.
Yeah, maybe kind of like if you have to leave home to understand what home really means.
And it definitely was a rebirth, like coming back. It's just you're just a new person with this new feeling of love and connectivity and worth, knowing that, hey, if I could make it that high, I can do anything, I can be anything. And you just want to just be the peace that you felt in when being up there. So that's my experience.
Beautiful. Thanks.
Awesome. Well, we've got so many great questions in the chat, and we're going to save a good chunk of time for more participant questions. But here, kind of at the halfway point, I want to address a particularly central question to this event, being a space education summit. But to put a designer's spin on it, how might we best prepare students or the next generation for humanity's future in space? So you can address that from whatever perspective you like. Maybe it's the growing commercial space economy. Maybe it's space settlement. You can look at that from a lot of different perspectives. But how might we best prepare students for humanity's future in space? And would love to hear from all three of you. Oh yeah, George, go for it.
I think this is an area where those of us in the aerospace community have not done a very good job of talking about the future in space to the rest of the public. Because traditionally, for very good reasons, the people who have had the opportunity to go to space were highly trained, specially selected test pilots, engineering PhDs, and medical doctors, and if they were fortunate, they had a chance to fly a couple times. And so even though space sounds cool to a lot of people, it immediately brings up in many people the thought, well, I can never be that. I can never do that. I'm not good at math, or there's no hope for me. But I think all that is changing now with the commercial space activities that we're starting to see. And government will always continue to have a very important role, but it won't be restricted to NASA or other government entities. And so if we look at some of the visions that the commercial space people have shared, Richard Branson talks about wanting to have the first global space lines. Jeff Bezos talks about wanting to see millions of people living and working in space to benefit Earth. And Elon Musk shares his desire that humanity become an interplanetary species. So all those are very ambitious goals that will take many years if we ever get to achieve them. But if we're going to start to take steps towards those goals, we're going to need lots of different kinds of people. Basically, any activity or job that we need on Earth, we're going to need that for space stations, for bases and research activities on the moon, on Mars, and in other places. So yes, we'll continue to need people who are good in science and technology and engineering and arts and math.
I said, you feel it here. I'm not hurting your knees by pushing like this. Right?
Não está a aleijar os joelhos. É na anca que sente, não é? Yeah.
But we're also going to need computer software programmers. We're going to need technicians and welders and cooks and farmers and Uber drivers, you name it. So if people are my response would be, stick with it. There is a place for you. Just figure out where you can plug in, because we're going to need all different kinds of people from all different kinds of backgrounds.
Boy, I love that, George. I could see the YouTube short of just that answer. with some minor editing to the interruption. Sorry about that. Charlie, it looks like you unmuted. I'd love to hear your perspectives on this.
Well, I absolutely agree with George. Of course, from the perspective of looking to and desiring, and nay, actually believing that it's incumbent upon our human societies and cultures to expand, to reach off of the home planet, that all skills are going to be necessary out there, and skills that we don't even appreciate the need for yet today. And but I want to overlay that with from my standpoint, the certainly necessary and serious um, reflection on the fact that we will be doing so off this planet. This is our home planet. This is the planet that has the location in which we have evolved all of our biophysical characteristics and needs and requirements. And space is, and locations in space, such as we have identified them, certainly those that are near us physically, are not friendly to us as living, breathing beings. And of necessity, as again George points out, as we become a spacefaring civilization, an expansive spacefaring civilization, we are going to have to take critical and necessary elements of our biosphere with us. The unknowns to deal with that are going to, in part, create the jobs, the needs, the skills that are among those, that sphere of needs that George refers to. So we're going to have those human skills, intellectual and practical skills, in not only learning more about our own selves out there in those environments, but also the elements of our biosphere that we take with us, that we must find means and ways to sustain around us in order to sustain us and our spacefaring civilization out there. So to summarize what I'm saying is, yes, there's tremendous opportunity and need for human characteristics and skills out there, but we must underlie that with support in the thinking, the attitudes of those individuals going out there. This is a risky place, and it will for generations be a risky place. The point being that in civilization, that we will over and over move toward minimizing those risks in each location, whether it's in a vehicle of our creation in orbital or cislunar or interplanetary space, or whether it's on the surface of another planetary body. We'll want to, and we will need to continually to evolve our workings in those environments to minimize risk. We've got to have that attitude. We've got to have individuals who are willing to accept risk and desire to be generalist enough, specializing in as many skills as they can, but generalist enough to know, to have situational awareness around them and sensitivity to what others will, both around them, because it'll be communities of people, what others around them need and what others around them can contribute to circumstances involved in the exploration and the settlement of space. So underlying human behaviors are something that we'll need to instill in our future spacefaring travelers and settlers in space. Appreciation of risk and looking for in themselves to address those risks and those needs in our civilization and answer those.
Love it. You hit so many important notes, from situational awareness to to risk taking to shepherding our biosphere through the solar system and beyond. Is because talking about exploration and settlement are two totally different endeavors. And you're right. That's a lot of skill sets and mindsets we've got to impart to the next generation of kids. Keisha, I would love to hear your thoughts on this too. How might we best prepare students for humanity's future in space?
There's been so many important nuggets that's been touched. So just to add a little bit more onto that, as a tourist going into space, we are non-professionals and more of just regular people like myself having that experience and can add to it as well and inspire others who are having so much fear about just the idea of going into space as well. Just, speaking about these experiences and opening up the mindset can also play such an important role. Just in my community as well, more than 90% of people are like, I wouldn't do it because I'm afraid. So seeing someone who is just regular and having this experience and really bringing back something so positive and sharing the stories is such an important contribution as well to the space industry. Just understanding, bringing that awareness of having more understanding, not just of the environment on our planet, but around our planet as well. Um, Knowing that there's nothing out there that's going to come and harm you with that peace that you feel out there. What can want to harm us here on this planet? So sometimes people go into that phantom mind, probably from movies or whatever, thinking that there are things out there that can hurt you. But having more discussions like this, getting into the schools and talking more with the kids, more fundraisers and more participation can really open up the eyes, I believe, to knowing that it's really, you don't need to be afraid of anything. If the ignorance is removed, if the more understanding is there, then, it can be more accepted among societies as well. As a coach as well, I feel more inspired as well to really help people to go past their limitation as well and the fears that has arisen as well from all of this. Just more involvement in schools, inspiring the kids, brainstorming, more innovation, more inclusion can really bring, I think, a really beneficial future as well moving forward. That it's not just professional based of engineers and mathematicians, but anyone really, psychologists, anyone that can really help people, doctors, and all of that. We all can be involved in this as well.
I love that, and that's definitely going to resonate with our team. As a former high school English teacher, I appreciate what you're saying about the importance of stories and inspiration for sure. I think that humanities are very important to our future. Well, Ron, let me hand it back to you for another question.
Great, thanks, Mark. And yeah, just what you're all saying there about what can we do to prepare students. What I think stands out for me thinking about that is that I don't, for the most part, students are not aware that they can be involved in the space industry. And I think it's so important for them to know that they can be, to think that, yes, they can go to space, they will go to space someday, and let them, sort out those kinds of roles that you talk about, Charlie. So um, that's some great thinking there. Thank you. So I'm going to go back to the chat with a question from our friend Mikhail Bashkov. Thanks, Mikhail. Great to see you here. You do great work. And he asked, what surprised you most during spaceflight? Or let me rephrase that and say, what is, if there is there something that surprised, are there a thing or two that surprised you about that you didn't expect? I mean, obviously you go into with a lot of thinking and anticipation, but what did you see up there, or what did you experience up there that was kind of surprising? And any let's see, Charlie, would you like to start?
Well, let me jump at that first by saying training, I think, is something that NASA does that is underappreciated directly and most visibly is the training and preparation for orbital flight. And from conversation and a little bit of insight I've got to what Virgin is doing and Blue is doing, the training that they give to participants on board their flights is also extensive to the extent of understanding and trying to appreciate ahead of time what you're going to be experiencing. But let me say that as I tell students and audiences, I return to start the answer with a question to the audience. Regardless of where you grew up on this planet, you were for probably most of your early maturation years, maybe into your adult life, only exposed to one limited environmental circumstance or one set of surroundings. But when you first went to the edge of the Grand Canyon, stood there yourself, when you first went to an ocean, a beach, and stood there and maybe with your feet in the surf or certainly just listening and looking. All of that was quite different, I dare say, quite different as perceived from the videos, the photographs, the even verbal conversations that you had with others who had prior experienced the reality of those environments, different from those that you had grown up with. Well, when you leave this planet and you see it from a distance, when you perceive the infinite depth and darkness of space with your own eyes, when you feel for minutes, tens of minutes, yea, verily, those that will be feeling the absence of gravity, perceiving the absence of gravity for days, weeks at a time, suddenly the impressions are so much more powerful than what you have imagined, I would dare say, unless you've got an extraordinarily over-the-top powerful imagination. It's saturating the senses. It is providing inputs that are so much more powerful and impressionable than seeing the videos. That as grand as 4K is in showing us what it's like to look out the window at the limb of the earth, when you see it and you're there to perceive it, that is what is so much more powerful.
Great, thank you. George or Keisha, what happened that anything you didn't expect?
So again, to me, the blackness, the bright blackness was a surprise. But picking up on Charlie's comments, training is very important. And we're going to see different companies with different kinds of vehicles and different strategies used to implement that training. So as an example, Blue Origin decided that they were going to have their system be completely autonomous. So there's no pilot on board flying the vehicle. There's nobody on the ground that's looking up, that's controlling things. It's the computers that are flying it. Now they have a fully staffed mission control on the ground overseeing all the systems and ready to step in if needed. But the vehicle itself was an autonomous system flying under the control of the computers. And what that allows is Blue Origin to very much streamline and shorten the training that is required. So unlike Charlie, with his many months of appropriate training and preparation for his orbital flights, with the Blue Origin suborbital flights on this autonomous vehicle, we just basically had 3 full days of training. And of course, we didn't have to learn how to fly it, but we were mastering the displays, how to talk on the radio, how to understand the timeline and what was expected, and what to do in the case of emergencies. And we did that over and over and over again in an excellent simulator, mock-up of the capsule that was on the ground. Blue Origin had even recorded all the sounds and noises that you would hear during your flight on a previous mission without people on board, and they played that back at full volume, such that we even had to have our ear protection in when we went through those flights. But that was tremendously helpful, because all these sounds, without the training, you would have, what's that? Is everything okay? But we knew what to expect, and that was very, very helpful. So in hindsight, I've been able to say, I didn't realize how effective training could be for those limited skills, different from the orbital flights, such that you could feel prepared and ready to react to emergencies or other unexpected conditions with just a few days if it's done well by professional trainers, which we had at Blue Origin.
Excellent. Thank you. Yeah, it's interesting to see different approaches and different effectiveness. Yeah, Keisha, some thoughts on that?
Yeah, the entire experience was really comfortable, just from takeoff to landing. It was like really comfortable. The training was like the expectation really matched the training, just for the emergency procedures and just for your comfort. But what was really beautiful was how inspired I felt. It was more of a feeling, how inspired I felt just being out there and just seeing our planet, just being in space. It felt like home. It felt like a familiar place. Like we were there before. I don't know how, but it just felt like it was a familiar place. How peaceful and connected it felt. We're just so small. I was just more surprised of how small our planet is, even if it looked so big, how small we are. But I didn't feel that small. I felt like I was a part of everything. I felt like I was just there, like just the eyes of the universe, just looking at everything. And it was really a spiritual connection, very inclusive connection. And just hearing from, like how others are experiencing this, other astronauts or others who've been to space, it's so similar. So I know that it was really a beautiful, real experience that was just so awe-inspiring.
Yeah, a lot of time people talk about having a oneness or feeling a unity in, and it's funny. It's you're on a spaceship, but you've actually left the big spaceship. So you're seeing the big spaceship from a smaller spaceship, and you feel a connection to that
Exactly.
bigger spaceship that
Exactly.
you don't see so much from the ground.
Well, I love that perspective. It's a sort of a dual perspective that we're so small, but you also got to feel that we're a part of something so much bigger, and that's just that changing of where you were viewing from. And I hope many more people do get to feel that experience and experience that inspiration. Anahita Nizami, one of our co-hosts, really wanted Ron and I to ask a question about psychological challenges, and a few great questions have come up in the chat around what was the hardest thing when you were in space, or was there anything that scared you in space? So if we could take a minute and maybe focus on the more challenging side of it, and your personal experience. Anything that scared you or was difficult or challenging that would be good to talk about for future astronauts.
Well, let me dive in with the first answer from my perspective. Again, I want to do focus in answer to that with training. Uh, as much as is feasible in time and effort, preparing the individual for the environments they're going to be experiencing, and the great rendition that George just gave in terms of simulated experience before you go, it all is very, very important to take the edge off of the sharp noises, the accelerations, the vibration, before you get into those environments, so that you're more attentive to the the situations around you and observing the view out the window as well, with your greater attention. Training is absolutely important, but um, minimizing surprises. I mean, as we like to say in the aviation business and elsewhere, no surprises. The objective should be in all things, no surprises. Well, it's the real world, and there always will be surprises. But trying to be prepared for those is all important. I to me, it was the training that moderated, that gave me the ability to control the level of concern, anxiety, yes, even maybe a momentary fear as something was happening, which I was probably aware was about to happen, did happen, felt it, heard it, sensed it, but I was aware of what it was, and that cut the level of concern and anxiety to where I was not debilitated by focusing on the question of, am I all right? Is this all right? What's happening? So yes, there were levels of fear, but training is really so important to minimize that, and again to allow you to experience in a more peaceful fashion what you're going through.
Well, I think you can really extend that as life advice too. If we think about students today, prepared for the. Well, we need to mute if you're not.
Friday at 10.
Sorry, Ron. Can you get him again? Thanks. Yeah, in any case, I think that's great advice, Charlie, for students across all their endeavors if they're well prepared. Right?
And I got to apologize. I've got something to address off screen here for just a couple of minutes. So I'll be right back.
No worries. Well, let's hear from George and Keisha, and then we're actually going to have to bring the panel to a close. A few housekeeping things before our first sessions. But fire away, George.
So just to reemphasize some of the points that Charlie has made, training can really help to allow you to know what to expect and to be more comfortable in the moment. And three of us who have flown, and Sharon and others who are on the line, fortunately had very safe and successful missions. But again, bringing up an earlier point by Charlie, space flight is still risky. As an example, the United States has had basically on the order of 400 human space flights since the beginning, and 4 of those have ended in fatal accidents. One X-15, Space Shuttle Challenger, Space Shuttle Columbia, and an early test flight of Spaceship Two. So 4 out of 400, that's a 1% fatal accident rate, which is 10,000 times more risky than flying on a commercial airliner. So don't want to mislead people. Space is exciting, it's fantastic, it's amazing, it is our future. But we've got some work to do in terms of how to have the price be lower and have the experience more safe. And right now, there is risk. And so people need to go into the opportunity, if they choose to do so, recognizing that that risk is present. And if other people say, this is really exciting, I want to play, I just don't want to go, that's okay too. We need plenty of people on the ground to provide support. So there's a place for everyone. If you're interested in accepting some risk, it's an amazing experience. But there is risk still there today.
Yeah, that's a good point to keep in mind. I mean, I think, for me with Virgin Galactic, it's risky, yes. Is the reward worth the risk? Absolutely. So Keisha.
Yeah, to be honest, I felt very safe because of the training, especially because of the training, but not only that, but because this is something that I really wanted to do. So I accepted whatever the risk will be, that, it's my choice. But in the training and with all the build up and understanding the technology and how open everyone has been with us, sharing every detail with Virgin Galactic, I felt very comfortable knowing that, it's full authenticity, the honesty is there, the technology is there. But I did know the risk, and it really hit me the day before, though, because Space for Humanity asked me to do a video just in case it went the other direction, leave something for my husband and for my mother. And I was like, oh my gosh, what do I say? So that was the first time I actually had a thought that, hey, it could actually go, more reality check, that it could actually go the other direction. But then I was able to sit in with my feelings, and I said, you know what, this is what I want, and I know it is fine. So many have gone before me, and it's okay. But then my biggest thing now is with my daughter is now with me. So if something does happen, hey, my kid is with me. But, she was 18 and she 100% wanted this, although she had a little bit of reservations the night before as well. But once we got to space, the first thing I did, I looked at her before enjoying the view, and I took one look at her, and I saw she was really captivated by everything. She was 100% involved. And I just made this sigh of relief. Now I can enjoy this experience now. And I just went into it 100%, really enjoying it. And return landed quite safely. Everything went well. So the risk is there, just like anything you do in life. You probably have a higher risk driving a vehicle because it's so many than going to space. But I felt quite safe.
What a unique perspective to be able to look over and see your daughter experiencing that. I'm so glad you shared that part of the story.
Yeah, it was so beautiful because it's like, how many times do you get to see your child do something for the first time as a teenager?
Also true, yeah. And I usually share this in a sort of humorous way, but my 14-year-old does not want to go to space because it's too dangerous. And it's like, well, at least he understands well. Um, Well, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen again as we bring the panel to a close, and really want to thank all three of you, George and Keisha and Charlie. Thank you so much for being a part of this and sharing your experience and your perspective. And thanks, Ron, too. It was just fantastic to have you be able to pipe in, having been there yourself. Um, so if you guys can use the clap function, or have some shaking hands in the video feeds here, or show your appreciation. Yes, live long and prosper, Charlie. Thanks for bringing that long-lived perspective too. It's hard to believe we got from science fiction to autonomous rocket ships in one lifetime here. But fantastic to have you all here sharing with everybody at the summit as well. And thank you to everybody who shared questions in the chat and responded to questions in the chat. It's really great to see an active chat in an event like this, because we're not just sitting in chairs and rows, we're all participating. So I want to share a couple of resources with you guys in case any of you are here just for the panel, and then we will roll into the first sessions. But I want to invite everyone to join the Space Educator Network. It's our group on Facebook. And if you just go to spaceeducator.net, it will actually take you there. But the Space Educator Network on Facebook or spaceeducator.net will redirect you. You can join us there. It's a great place to share resources that are relevant to space education, and to respond to each other and engage with each other like you are in the chat here today. And if anybody's really on top of it, maybe you can drop a link in the chat to spaceeducator.net. Similarly, there is a free and open education resource I had the privilege to be able to build with a group of subject matter experts when I was working with Space Prize, the Space Prize Foundation in New York City. This looks at an introduction to space science and the history of space exploration, but also why space is important to people on Earth, and what sort of skill sets and mindsets students will need to be successful in an unpredictable, fast-moving future. It looks at issues of space philosophy, from ethics and governance and sustainability, and looks much further at future implications like avoiding existential threats and perhaps achieving our higher aspirations of shepherding the biosphere throughout the solar system. So a lot of those themes were touched on today, but that's a complete space education curriculum that you guys can bring to your students as well. And then obviously, sorry, that was at spaceeducation.org. We'll redirect you to the open source textbook. I want to, of course, highlight a couple of books by myself and my co-hosts. So I do have a book on space education, a little bit more of an academic volume, but a lot of the papers I wrote on exactly these topics, preparing students for humanity's multi-planet future. And then also co-written by our host, Anahita Nizami and Frank White, who will be doing the fireside chat this afternoon. Star Sailor is a children's book and a fictional book. It's a story that introduces a lot of the elements of the overview effect. So I hope you guys will check out my book, but also Anahita and Frank's Star Sailor, which is intended for children. I do want to point out that I run a course for teachers. It's a inexpensive online course. We meet on Zoom like this for 12 modules, covering basically everything in that curriculum and in my book. So it's a great introduction to kind of bring yourself up to speed on all of this, and raise your confidence in talking to your students about space, even if you're not a physicist or science teacher or space enthusiast for that matter. We sort of cover all the bases. We also take teachers out on field experiences. We've got one coming up in October with geologist Dr. Kirby Runyon, who worked on the New Horizons mission to Pluto. He has mapped the moon and Mars for scientific expeditions, and he takes teachers out into the New Mexico desert. We tour Spaceport America and the Virgin Galactic facilities there. And then we go to landforms in the desert that are analogous to places you would find on the moon or Mars or elsewhere. So you're touring the solar system without leaving New Mexico. If you guys are interested in that, that's just arieslearning.com/astrogeology. The previous one, by the way, is arieslearning.com/course. So all those links will be shared with you over the course of the day if they're not in the chat already. I want to particularly mention the Aldrin Family Foundation, a promotional partner in this. I do a lot of work with them. Their signature programs are these giant maps of the moon and Mars, and getting those into classrooms where kids can interact with them with robotic rovers and rockets and lots of activities that are authentic in the sense that kids are working together to solve problems, very open-ended, but standards aligned. So if anybody's interested in hearing more about that and how to get them into your schools, reach out to me anytime, or you can just go to aldrinfoundation.org to learn more. Similarly, I want to mention our partners at SLU. SLU has given students access to remote telescopes around the world. So instead of having a telescope at your school and worrying about weather and light pollution, wherever you happen to be, you can access, say, a half-meter telescope at 9,000 feet in the Canary Islands in the middle of the night. And students can do this from any device with a browser. And there's lots of learning resources and learning quests baked right in as well. So that's at slu.com, or you can reach out to me anytime if you would like to learn more about that as well. So for the rest of the day, we will